All right. Okay. Good one, Kyle. All right. Well, we are in week 2, the final week of a series called Who Am I? Last week, TJ, Hannah G, and Ethan shared their testimonies. Yeah, it was you. So that's how that works. And I heard you really enjoyed. Did you enjoy hearing their testimonies last week? So what we did is we had them share their stories, and then we're going to finish up this week with me just teaching a little bit about identity. And what I really think identity is what makes you who you are. What makes you who you are. Like if you were to stand up here and to describe yourself, what sorts of things would you say? How would you tell me who you are? Well, how would you describe yourself? Or another question you could ask is, how would somebody else describe you? To tell you who you are, and would it be the same or would it be different as how you describe yourself? I know growing up, being a triplet, that was really the primary factor that a lot of people knew me as, like one of the Arlens or one of the triplets. But if we were to actually ask me about how I would describe myself, I probably wouldn't actually say that right away. Like it would be somewhere maybe in my description of who I am, but that wasn't really the primary way that I viewed myself. And I wonder if you feel that way too. Keelan's turning off the fog machine, which is nice. Yeah. But I wonder if you're known for something at school, maybe it's the sport that you play or something that you do, and I wonder if that sometimes feels like all that you are and you feel like you have to be that. Because in reality, right, what makes us who we are, it's a complex picture. It's a lot of different things that sort of make up who we are. And so what you're going to actually get to do in small group, only if you want to tonight, is do a little arts and crafts. I know. And you get to draw a picture of all of the things that make you who you are. And I know. And I did an example for you all, so we'll see that. That is a pretzel. I don't know why everyone looks at the pretzel first, but so this is my picture. Clearly an artist is not part of my identity. I did my best. But these things are really, when I thought about who I was, these were the sorts of things that I drew. So I drew things that I like to do, like make pretzels and read books. And I also drew things that were true about me, like what I was good at. So I wrote 2 times 2 equals 4 because I like learning. The glasses is part of the learning. Yeah. I mean, so Maya's labeling me, and that feels interesting. But I wrote the people that I was associated to, right? Because that's part of my identity, my friends and family. And then I wrote some of my personality traits, right? I put a to-do list because I like getting things done. I put a shh because I'm an introvert. But all of these things sort of make me who I am. Yeah, Bridget.
What is the weird t-shirt?
Oh, that was supposed to be a present because I like to surf. I thought I could do like a 3D with like a bow on top. Thank you. Yeah. If you have questions about what different things are, I will be happy to describe them to you in detail. I did go to the Olympics. That's what those rings are. Yes, Nathan. Last question. That was your question? Okay. Yep, I'm an Olympic athlete. TJ's a professional basketball player. I'm an Olympic athlete. Ice dancing. Okay, so moving on from the picture. Pull that thing down. Thank you. You're going to get a chance to kind of draw and make all of those things of who you are, but really the point it's trying to illustrate is that who we are is this big, complex picture, right? It's a mix of all these different things, of our interests, of our hobbies, of the beliefs that make the most sense to us, of our personalities, and then of the people that we associate with, the groups that we're connected to. If I would put all of these things together, right, in like a mixing bowl, and that would be who you are. And so we understand that who we are is this complicated, complex things, and some of us have a good understanding of who we are, and some of us are still trying to figure that out. But what we actually end up seeing, because we're in church, you know that the question is coming, what does this have to do with Jesus? How does my faith and my identity, who I am, how do those things interact together? What is the relationship between these two different things? Because I think most of us have a sense that if we're Christians in the room, that our faith should be an important part of our identity. That our faith should play a big role in who we are, if it's going to affect how we see ourselves and others in the world. But I think at the same point, sometimes we can get this feeling like, but I'm so much more than that. And we can not want our faith to like overshadow the rest of who we are. Because I think sometimes we're given this image that if we're going to be a follower of Jesus, we have to dress a certain way. We have to have certain interests. We have to like certain things. And that's true to an extent, isn't it? Like we want to avoid things that harm people and go to things that are good. But there's actually a lot of variety. And sometimes I think we find ourselves thinking like, I'm a complex person and I want to represent that. And I don't want to just be a Christian. I want to be more than that. And so with the time remaining, what I want to do is just give us two things that I think helps us explain our relationship between our faith and our identity. How Jesus affects who we are. And the first thing is this, that everything else comes second. And this is like the big, like, here we go. This is the big thing, that really what we believe, how your identity interacts with your faith, is that your life is reordered in Christ. That's not to say that the other parts of who you are don't matter or aren't important. We actually believe that God created you and that he did it with intention. And so the things that you like, the things that you're good at, the personality that you have, that all actually plays an important role in who you are and how you follow Christ. So it's not saying that the rest of those things in your picture that you drew don't matter or aren't important, but it is saying that there is a specific order to these things, namely that everything else needs to come second to Christ. That the most important thing about you becomes that you are a follower of Christ and a child of God. And that can be tough for us, maybe in this room, if we're not even really sure how important Christ is to us. Like we're not even really sure what we feel or what spot we want our identity as a Christian to take up in our overall identity. And I'm not saying that in order to be a Christian, you have to be like, yeah, it's the most important thing in my life right now. But I am saying like that is the goal. That's the expectation. In fact, Jesus is telling his disciples, he's describing to them what it looks like to follow him. And this is what he says. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. It's a bold statement, and it's a statement that following Jesus is meant to be, it's supposed to be a total life commitment. And that sometimes means denying ourselves. In the context of this verse, it probably means sort of our desires that are against the way of Jesus. But it might mean denying ourselves in order to follow Jesus. It might mean a reordering of the things that make us who they are. If they're loving and if they're kind, they don't have to go away. Maybe some things do. But they do have to get reordered. because Christianity is simply not designed to be one of the many things that make us who we are, but the main thing. And I think we heard that in the testimonies that we heard last week, like with TJ's, with his basketball story, right? And one of the reasons I asked TJ to share is because I knew that basketball was really important to him, and it still is. Like, it wasn't like, oh, like I liked basketball and then I followed Jesus, so I had to get rid of all that and just focus on Jesus. No, like basketball's still a big part of his life, but he knew what the order had to be. That it couldn't be basketball player first and Jesus follower second, that those things had to get reordered, that they had to get flipped. That everything else that we do should be through the lens of a Christ follower. It's like if you were to see this picture, I'm like so hesitant to show you this picture of me again. If you were to see this, right, it would be like if I drew little glasses on myself and they were like my Jesus glasses. And so that everything else that I did it through the lens of Christ, through the lens of being a Christ follower. And I think one of the reasons this is challenging is because I think there's actually been a really poor example set for you by people ahead of you. I know I've watched in the past couple years as people older than you have gotten the order really wrong, particularly when it comes to politics on both sides. I'm not talking about one party, I'm just talking about politics in general. I've watched people get the order wrong and consider politics as the most important thing. So much so that it clouds and affects everything else that they do, including how they follow Christ. And that is a wrong order. Christ comes first. It affects how we view everything else. And just because other people before you have gotten that order wrong doesn't mean that you have to do that too. Can you be involved in everything else, including politics? Yes, you can. But you're called to do it by going, what would I do here because I follow Jesus? In fact, I think that's a really important question to ask ourselves. Because I don't think we automatically know whether Christ is the most important part of our identity. And so one good thing that we can start asking ourselves when we go to different things is go, because I follow Jesus, what do I have to do here? Walk into school and say, because I follow Jesus, what do I have to do here? Walk onto your sports team and say, because I follow Jesus, what do I have to do here? Connect with your family and your friends and say, because I follow Jesus, what do I have to do here? And do you know what's tough about this question? There's not always a clear answer. Like if you're like, one of your hobbies is like like to watch TV, and I could just stand up here and go, I'm going to write a big chart. On this side, it's all the TV shows Christians can watch, and on this side, it's all the TV shows Christians can't. And this is the way it is. This is just the way it's going to be. But that's not what faith is. And sometimes the answer is different for each and every one of us. But the question still needs to be asked. And another reason this is hard is because sometimes we know intuitively what I should do here if I follow Christ, and we still don't want to do it. Right? You probably know that if you were a perfect Christ follower, every time you spoke to your parents, it was going to be really respectful and kind, right? I don't know about you, but that isn't always true for me. So it doesn't mean that you have to always know the right answer, and doesn't mean that you always do it perfectly. No, of course it doesn't. But when we ask the question, we can help identify and recognize how important, what order is my faith in everything else? Or am I letting something else rise to the top and be more important? Am I letting something else come before my faith? Because Jesus said, hey, what it looks like to follow me is to deny yourself, is to remember that I'm the most important. And the second thing is this, that we are given an unshakable foundation. I think this is a thing we need to grasp if we understand how our faith interacts with who we are, our identity, that we are given an unshakable foundation. What that means is that nobody else gets to tell us our worth. Nobody else gets to tell us our worth. You see, the risk about making these other things that make us who we are, the most important thing is that the most important things in our life tend to be the things that we tie our value to. And so those are the things that our success or failure in affects our worth, or the acceptance or the rejection of the people in those categories affects our worth. And what we want to do is to make sure that you're not connecting your worth to something that might not hold up, to something that might not be consistent, to something that might let you down. I remember a time for me, I was a senior in high school, and I don't know if things have changed, but when I was a senior in high school, it was a common understanding that your last semester grades maybe weren't all that important. Because if you were going to college, you were probably already accepted, and as long as you were doing fine, like you were going to graduate, like everything was cool. And I had a physics final, which, don't even get me started on how much I hated that. A physics final is the last final on the last day of my senior year. And I was like studying super hard for it. And I remember my brother Jackson walking in, and he like sees me like doing all these practice problems, and he's like, "What are you doing right now?" He's like, "You're gonna be fine. This doesn't even matter. It's not gonna mess with you that much. Like, just relax. Why are you putting so much effort into this?" And to him, it wasn't a big deal. But to me, that was the one place in the like ecosystem that was high school that I could like hold up to the world and go, "This is where my value is. This is where I'm connected to." And so I had to do well on that. It didn't matter if it mattered to somebody else or not. It mattered to me because if I didn't do well, it felt like a failure. And if I failed, it meant that I was a failure. And the like emotional, dramatic part of this wasn't that I spent a few extra hours studying for a test that I didn't need to study for. It's the fear, it's the anxiety that gets wrapped up in that. Of knowing that whatever that letter grade is at the end of the semester can impact like how I see myself as a person. Like that's a big deal. And so this is why I think it's important that our faith becomes part of our identity. In fact, when John, the writer of the Gospel of John, is introducing Jesus to his readers for the first time, this is what he says. He says, "But to all who did receive him, Jesus, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of blood, nor of the desire or will of man, but born of God." Now, if we had time, I could kind of take you through why this title, like children of God or child of God, is so important in the like scheme of you and theology and all those things, but we don't have time. But what it means is that to be a child of God is to mean that you are allowing God to define your worth and your value. And what we know about God is that he is consistent and that he is unchanging. And he says, "You are my child," which means you have inherent value, that you are valuable, that you are my child, which means I love you, not based on your performance, but based just on your relationship to me, who you are, and that can't change. That you were created to matter and make a difference because I created you with intention, and I created you to do that. And so what we find is that we can receive this unshakable foundation where Jesus is the one who tells us our worth. And what I think happens is not that those other things all of a sudden don't matter, but I think it takes the pressure off. Because if we realize that our value and our worth is unchanging, that it is secure, we can go off and try to do all of the things that we want to do. We can be all the things that we want to be. Because the success and failure of those things, they can't actually change who we know that we are at our core. The acceptance or rejection of people, it actually can't change who we know we are at our core. because we have an unshakable foundation that reminds us of who we are no matter what we're walking through and no matter what we're facing. To close, I'm just going to talk about this statistic that I heard this week, and you might have heard it too, actually. But it's from Facebook, who owns Instagram and Facebook. And last week, there was this report that Facebook had known that they had the statistics, that they knew that Instagram, the way that they had designed it, the algorithms, the filters, the things that were being used, they knew that it was causing negative self-image, body image, in at least 1/3 of teen girls. At least 1/3. Like, they knew that the thing that they had designed, the app that's designed to grab your attention so that it can market things to you that are going to tell you that if you buy them, you'll be more beautiful and then valuable, I guess. The things that was designed to grab your attention, that they knew what their app was doing was actually making girls your age feel worse about themselves, consider themselves less worthy and less valuable. And I know if I was to have you all close your eyes and raise your hand, we'd figure out that there's a lot more than just 1/3 of us that feel some sort of insecurity about how we look. Whether it's how tall we are, or how strong we are, or how pretty we are, or how we dress, or what our body looks like. And it makes me very sad that there are messages being projected to you that tell you that your appearance is or isn't good enough. But it also reminds me that you need to know that nobody else gets to tell you how valuable you are. Nobody else gets to tell you how worthy of love you are. Nobody else gets to tell you if you measure up or not, except for God. Not an app, not your friends, nobody else. Because we walk around with these insecurities on our shoulders that tell us if we have a bad day, if we slip off, if we don't do enough, that somehow changes who we are and whether or not we are worthy of love, and that is not true. And if I'm going to leave you with anything today, it's just a reminder that nothing gets to change your worth as an individual. Nothing. Except for God, who tells you that you are enough. You are more than enough, that you are worthy of love, that you deserve to be treated with love, and that you are capable of giving love. That is who you are at your core. That is who you are. Let's pray. Lord, we come to you aware of the ways that we feel good enough and the ways that we don't. And I just pray that as those things pop up into every student's mind, Lord, that you would just help them recognize the lies that they see. Would your truth speak above the lies? As we sing about you and how good you are, would you remind us of what that means for us as your children? That you look at us and you see love, and you see someone that you created with intention for a purpose, Jesus. I pray that every student in this room, every leader in this room would know that that is true in your name.